Hey everybody, just doing a work in progress and update on my Knight Titan. Been a while since I've really worked on this heavily. I essentially kind of spaced my time out for next New Year's painting challenge, where I said I was going to just assemble the model and then I was going to sculpt the pilot and then I was going to start to paint it. Well, the sculpting the pilot piece, as many of you may have followed along during that, took me longer than I expected, and then I just moved on to other things, and time just goes by really quick, and it's amazing to me that it's really the end of the year. I almost can't believe it. But I am determined to get this done before the end of the year, as I said. And so this is my main priority. I've put the goblins aside for a moment just to do this. Now, since, I guess, doing an update last week for the channel, I have went, headfirst into this, and I'm kind of doing a bit of a mixture of the way that they did the tutorial on the Warhammer TV channel. So the way that was done, I borrowed some of the things that they showed in there, and then some of the stuff I just did typically the way I do things, the way I've picked up some stuff over the years, just other ways I prefer it. Like, to give you an example, rather than just sort of taking a big dry brush and painting the whole model lead belcher, I used something I've showed on the channel already, and that is this Vallejo metallic color, and this is dark aluminum. Now, this is the first time I've used this completely through the airbrush, like to any significant degree. It was amazing. Now, I've done some other things to this, but I'll just say that it actually had a really nice, bright, great coverage without any dilution. I didn't have to add any water whatsoever, and it just went through so smooth. So that was an awesome little test. It's the first time I've done that, and so I sprayed the whole model after priming it with lead belcher. And so what I did do that was recommended from the 40K channel was to do 2 coats of Nuln oil. And so, they'd mention it really depends on what kind of look you're going for, how clean you want it. I wanted this to be really dirty looking in the skeleton of the metal, and so that's why I went the route that they went as well, and pretty pleased with that. I'll show maybe some close-ups in a bit, but in addition to that, I picked out the details. I'm just working on the skeleton, and so I used really 3 different kinds of metallics. I used mostly bronze on the edging and things, but some of the I used warp block bronze on some of the details, so that's like a darker bronze. I used a regular Vallejo bronze, and then I used some gold, and I actually used the old shining gold. That's this one here. That's no longer available by GW. So I used that on like the eagles and some of the decorative items. One thing I did want to bring up today, I thought to myself, I don't really utilize my channel for me getting info enough, because there's so many people with a lot of experience that watch as subscribers, and I was kind of thinking to myself, like, I have a lot left in this shining gold, but I was looking on the coat de arms line, because they're supposedly the original GW line, and when I was looking at some of their paints, they had one that has another name, but it says, old GW name Shining Gold. And so I was curious if anybody in the channel has ever used the Coat d'Arms. Specifically, do you find the Shining Gold to be the same? Because I also remember, I believe it was Idic Beer that was saying that he likes to use this as well, and he's got a little bit left, and just like me here. But I'm curious, like, if that Shining Gold from the Coat d'Arms line, which is supposedly the formula of the original GW line, is the same. If somebody can throw that in the comments, I'd really appreciate it. But I picked out the metallics, and I did the wash. Through that time, I did actually just prime, and I'd prime that black, but I primed this light gray, and I did all the panels with the airbrush and primed them, and I'm getting this ready for paint. I did do a little bit of details through the model, like brighten up some of the pistons that are still working. They shouldn't be dirty because they're actually, constantly got oil and moving parts, and should be maintained, I suppose. And I did some of the highlights of the eyes. Now, for the eyes, I actually went with, let's see if I can get this here, a good shot of it. So for the eyes, I actually went with an amber. So I didn't go, I didn't want to go, I didn't go yellow and I didn't go orange, although it might look a little orange, but I went for an amber. So it's sort of like in between an orange and a yellow for all of the lighting, including the screen, and you know, the little monitors. You know, I was kind of not sure which one to do, which, you know, for like what I wanted for the eyes and like the brightly colored stuff. Red and green would have been natural choices. I do often use those. The reason I went for amber, I just kind of like amber as a color. It kind of reminds me of the old IBM and Apple screens from like the early 1980s, and just looks very retro to me. And that's kind of why I wanted that sort of look. Now, one of the difficult things is I will have some yellow and some orange on the outside, and so it's not going to contrast with those pieces. But I think the amber is different enough to the bright yellow that I'll be doing that it should be fine. And so, yeah, so that's kind of what I decided to go with. I am going to be leaving the face just like that. I'm not actually going to use one of the masks. I actually like the mechanical kind of look. I actually, I'll talk a little bit more about like what I'm going for design-wise, but I'll just show, like, you guys have probably seen this in the past, like a long time ago, but this is a little test I did for my Legio Graphonicus painting style. Legio Graphonicus is supposed to be gray and yellow, and they did change from pre-heresy to post-heresy. I'm using more of a pre-heresy look where the gray is darker than lighter. It doesn't perfectly fit with the background that I have for the army, but I just like, for Mechanicum, a little bit of dark in there. I don't like too much bright. I wanted to have some, so I like that darker gray contrasting with the yellow. And so this is a little Tech Priest that I have here as just, I pulled him out while I was doing this for both inspiration and just to look at what I'd done before, because it'd been a while. You know, like, I've talked many times on the channel about the background to my little force that I'm doing over time. It's more, not even, I may use it to play at one point, but it's more of just like a little fluffy background thing because I like the 40K universe. These guys are, I've talked about it, they're sort of escapees from a planet with my Space Marines, which are Knights of Griffin. This did actually in the background happen according to the background that Games Workshop publishes, that Griffin 4 was destroyed by the Leviathan fleet. And so these guys are essentially escapees, and they met up naturally with the Space Marine chapter that was in that sector that also survived. And now they're sort of just out there doing the work of the Emperor on the fringes of the universe, you know, or I should say of the Imperium, together. And although I could kind of build this Mechanicum force a lot of different ways, the way I envision this, just because I think it's cool, is I want to just build a little, like, planet exploration force. So, like, when they're traveling through the universe and they're looking for supplies and natural resources and things like that, and they don't know where they're going, you know, they don't know what's on a planet before they go, they send initial exploratory force. And you might say, well, Titan, you know. Well, you know, this is the heavy backup. This is as big as it gets, probably, for that exploratory force. This is like sending down a knight just to maybe guard an initial fortification or go to a pass or somewhere where you know there's a problem because somebody's already gotten into problems. I actually like the idea of the Forge World, and I don't even remember their names now because I used to, they're not the Sakatari, but the Thralls, I believe. They're Mechanicum Thralls, and they're basically like, you know, humans that were the lower base end of society that have been essentially lobotomized and half mechanical, half not, and they just are sort of like a bit like cyborg zombies, kind of, that just go out and you know, in mass numbers. So I could see, like, I always wanted a bunch of thralls, like, to put with a Titan, and then they also have these automatons. They're sort of like robots that run along the ground really fast, and they're kind of like four-legged, I believe, hunters, you know, essentially. they have some artillery range weaponry, but they also have like claws or something, and they're just really cool. Like they're just fast and they'll run along the ground. I could see having as a backbone initially like this, the thralls and those kind of things. Like, you know, the ship comes down, you know, and you've got like the thralls come out, you know, then the hunters come out and they start doing surveillance circles around the landing site, making sure everything is safe and spreading that ring out, you know, and, you know, it probably could have an HQ, like a tech priest, higher level, you know, and it's funny because I've not read the background for a while now, nor some of the names. I think it's the Magos, you know, would potentially have a Magos, you know, which and that is sort of oversees it, and maybe even some tech priests or something like that. But that's sort of the idea, and I'm gonna paint this guy like so. I want him dirty. You know, I don't want them to look brand new by any means, because like they're out on the fringes, you know, like they work with what they've got. The base, I'm going to do sort of like a Martian sort of landscape, like I did this one, red, and I'll use some crackle material on it. I have, speaking of the base, worked a bit on it. I've got just cork down right now. I'm pretty happy with this, you know. And so that's what I've got so far. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put plaster over the whole thing. So it's not going to be rigid like this, it's going to be softer. And then I'm also going to use the crackle. So this is really going to be the skeleton for a mound in all of these spots. And there's some spots where it's recessed. And I'm going to crackle it and use the Martian earth sort of red tone. And I've got some mechanical pieces. In a couple of spots I might have some mechanical pieces like I have here. Although I might not do too much of that because they're in some cases on different worlds where it's probably not junk lying around. But I'm going to do the plaster. I'm trying a new effect where I'm going to be mixing plaster water with paint and a little bit of Elmer's glue. I've been reading up on that. There's some projects where I'm trying to do some trees and I'm going to be using that same mixture. Part of it is you can carve it, and it also will have paint through it, so when you carve it, or as bases get damaged, you won't see like white specks underneath, which is what I often see on prior work that I've done where I just paint plaster. Because you have a color going through it, if you do have like little dings and things that happen, like it doesn't just immediately stand out. And then also, if you're doing trees, which is I'm getting off topic, but if you're having plastered wire trees, you can carve it and shape it the way you want, and it's got some paint going all the way through it, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to experiment on this with that sort of technique. Not sure how many of you have done that already. If so, feel free to leave comments, because I'm interested in that. Not only the ratios, I've been reading up on it, but I'm interested what people might have been successful with. I apologize today, I've got stuff all over the place. My table's not in really good YouTube channel viewership, I guess, status. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. I did, many of you, I didn't point it out, but I painted my pilot. So this is the guy that I sculpted, and you know what's really funny is, well, one, I'm loving the knight as it's coming together, just because it's such an awesome model. I've always wanted to paint one of these, just never have. But I have to say, like, even though like my sculpting isn't nearly as good, or even in the same universe as GW sculptors, and whether it be plastic or resin, doesn't matter. Putting all this, oh, there we go. It's funny how much 2 layers of wash can actually freeze up a joint on something. And so, even though my sculpting's nowhere close to the guy who did this model, my favorite part of the model is the pilot. I love having a pilot in there, and I love just the fact that I took all that time, like, and to make him up, and he's kind of unique. And so it's really just a fun part of this process, and it was really frustrating, but it was worth it. I have other things to do. Like I said, I was going to put some wires in there. Like I feel like there's lots to do on this in various different parts that I haven't gotten to. But yeah, I'm going to put a little bit more in here and some wires. But I'm just sort of jumping all over the place right now. So I think I'm going to be working on the base next. I want to get him down today on the base. I'm going to put the plaster down after I glue his feet down to this. It's not ideal to be painting under these feet and things, but it's not really a great model to pin, in my opinion. Like there is some ball sockets like underneath here, but they're kind of like hollow, and there's two, it's mostly hollow, and I could see people may have successfully pinned it, but I actually think it's probably going to be better just to use all the surface area around the feet with crazy glue and just glue it down before putting the plaster down. That's my preference. And so I think that's what I'm going to do. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm a little all over the place at the moment. I am going to use the standard decals that come with it for like some of the mechanicum pieces, but I'm going to also print off and make some of my own decals for Legio Graphonicus. I got a really nice sheet off of Bolter and Chainsaw, the website. They have a lot of good resources there on that forum website. I've successfully done that before for my Knights of Griffin. I'm hoping that I can do it again. It's been a long time since I printed those off and get a good result. I'll likely have some very specific Legio Graphonicus stuff for like the shield here and the hanging piece that hangs here, as well as just different spots, like potentially on one of the shoulders, and just little ones, little pieces. But yeah, I must say that I'm actually really enjoying this now that I've got it started and I'm working on it. There's nothing like actually just doing something and putting it aside and staring at it forever and really kind of getting out of sync with your project, and just, it's amazing how long time or how fast time can go by and how much time can go by while you just have it sitting there on your desk, and you kind of lose enthusiasm when you're not working on it. Like you can lose enthusiasm to not work on it, in my experience, but then like you even lose even more by actually just having it out of sight, out of mind, even if it's like right in front of you in the corner, ignoring it. And so now that I'm working on it, like I'm really enjoying it, and I kind of remember why I wanted to do it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm rambling like crazy today, but that's what I'm doing at the moment, and I hope to have lots of progress next week. All right, well, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and talk to you later.